Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sky. This is my mother, Martha. And we're just continuing on in our saga series of XJW witnesses surviving the truth. My mom is going to talk about her experience getting disfellowshipped and really coming through that and how she kind of recovered. So,
Okay, I guess I can say at the beginning there, by the grace of God, I got through it. But I want to say when I was very young, I took things really seriously. My mother was abused, and I saw a lot of abuse, and I was abused myself in a bad environment, and I really clung on to what I knew and believed was God and the truth. And so I took things very hard and very seriously. And when I was about 12, we were in the Santa Monica Kingdom Hall. And by the way, I went to the meetings on my own. Nobody forced me, nobody made me, nobody ever studied with me, ever. Neither my parents or anybody in the congregation. I started reading the Bible when I was 12, started reading it through, and I got a lot of misperceptions about things because I didn't understand them. And later, like I said, and that was when I was about 12, I started reading, but I started going to meetings when I was about 10 by myself. And that time, I didn't even know if the Bible had chapters and verses, something I learned. And when I was about 12, I was at the Santa Monica Kingdom Hall, and it was the first time I ever found out about disfellowship. I was sitting there, and at the end of the meeting, they made this announcement. And the thing was, when you're a kid, you really don't understand. I didn't understand a lot of what was said. I couldn't follow it. And yet, what stood out to me was the deafening silence in the hall. Before, during, and after this announcement was drastically wrong. I knew something was just terribly wrong. And I didn't understand it, and what happened was literally, it was so intense that I believe at this time was started what I would call the phenomena of hearing somebody disfellowship. I went totally deaf and blind, literally blind. I couldn't see or hear for a few minutes because it was so horrible and shocking.
mm-hmm.
And that is something that I continued to experience all through the rest of my 42 years. Okay? So you can imagine you have that kind of trauma, what it was like when I was disfellowshipped. I did do something wrong. I told them about it. In fact, I couldn't face it. I actually wrote a letter, and I ended up going through 3 committee meetings, which 3 minutes finally. Yeah, I did petition. And after they still denied me, I actually wrote the society, which they still decided to back up the congregation. The thing was, you're sitting in front of 3 men, which is a horrible experience. And then finally at the end, it was 6 men. The thing was, I did not, at that time, really want to leave the organization. It was everything to me. It had become my father, my mother. It was everything to me. I don't want to sound like I was a witness fanatic, but I still had this very strong belief system in the organization as kind of something that God was using, and I did not want to be thrown out of the organization. The meetings were stretched out a little at the time, and it took a little bit longer than they usually do take. And the last time before I had the final appeal committee, I had a migraine for 4 days straight. I was unable to alleviate at all, and I still went to the meeting because basically I believe I was told that if I didn't make it, to the meeting, I would be disfellowshipped permanently anyway. So I brought myself to the meeting, and one thing I forgot to do was bring Kleenex. And I was crying a lot, and nobody gave me even a Kleenex. And I, was wiping my nose on my sleeves. I was in bad shape. I was really in bad shape. And I will say that, I had, before I wrote the letter, decided if I have to be disfellowshipped, I have to be. But I'm not going to bring danger to the congregation. My whole thinking was that I didn't want to bring God's displeasure to the congregation by not turning myself in. Okay. Well, we get this from such stories as the Israelite who stole the stuff, the gold or whatever it was, and put it under the tent. I forget, he had forbidden objects, and the whole family. Anyway, they took them all out and stoned them. So we didn't want to be like him. We had to turn ourselves in, so the whole congregation wasn't cursed by God. So that was
she carried a lot of weight.
I did.
Yeah.
I really, 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 I had done nursing. I was nursing. I felt, I had to take care of my mother, my brother, and sister, protect them from the monster in the family, everything. I took things really hard and really seriously. And so it was a horrible, horrible experience being really humiliated in front of these men and not getting any compassion or understanding. And then they told me to go out of the room, and it was really strange that they didn't listen to anything I had to say. It was, I think they were like hearing somebody else or something else.
No.
It was very strange,
This is the same group of men, though, that I had been raised with, and they did not like my mother. They never did growing up.
Well,
because she was more of a thinker and outspoken, and she would say things that were thought-provoking or dare kind of ride the line that didn't maybe question what the society or a scripture that wasn't they didn't, in a way that they didn't agree or think that was a little bit too out of bounds.
Well, there was a lot of abuse of children, and we don't want to go into this right now.
That we can do.
Yeah, we can't do it right now, but I would say they
were
couldn't get
waiting. They were waiting to disfellowship my mother. They were waiting for the reason, and she gave it to them. She handed it to them on a platter.
On a golden platter.
On a golden platter, and they're like, "Thank you very much." Yes. And that was it. That's all that they needed. And so they weren't listening.
You're out of here.
And after watching the videos with the other elders that have talked about how the committee meetings went on, it leaves no doubt as to what really was happening there. And they had already made up their mind. They'd already talked to the other elders before they even heard my mother's. It was completely
I actually
decided.
remarried my husband at this time, and he, even though he hadn't been to the meetings for many years, and thought they were horrible, and he said it was all a kangaroo court,
It is. He's hopping around.
Yeah. Hop, yeah. And he went in. When I went out, he says, "Well, I'm going in there," and he was in there for an hour giving them a piece of his mind. And he said, "Well,
they didn't disfellowship my dad either."
No, they never disfellowshipped.
No, they never did.
No, this was very strange if you knew the whole story. And so he told them, "Well, you've got a problem here. You've got the law of the faithful and discreet slave. You've got the law of Caesar, and what else was? The law of the Bible." Anyway, he said, "Now, which one are you going to follow?"
Which one are you upholding here?
He was a brilliant man. I mean, he really was brilliant, and he could have been an attorney or whatever. But I was in the car, literally bouncing off the interior, screaming and crying. And he finally came out and he said, "Well, they disfellowshipped you." And I said, "Take me to the emergency." I had to have a shot. I had never in my life have I done this? Did I ever
and
do
I
that?
was at home when she came in the door. She was hysterical, sobbing. And then when I saw her like that, and she says they're going to disfellowship me, and I couldn't believe that this was happening because I wasn't auxiliary anymore, but I had come back from my own experience in Hawaii. I was still going to all the meetings, and I thought, how is my mother going to be condemned to die by God from this group of men? And that's when I called the other elder in the hall that I was attending, and was like, something has to be done. This isn't right. And but my mom was hysterical, and
I do have a bit of a hysterical nature. I may look
does.
calm here, but I do, but I'm pretty good. But it was quite a horrible experience for me. I just want to lay the groundwork here. This was not something I took lightly. It wasn't like I had gone to them hoping they were going to throw me out or had decided. Like I said, it was really, like Psalm says, even if my own father and my mother should leave me, Jehovah himself will take me up. And I really had experienced that. I had a lot of abandonment from my mother and my family growing up, and I became the strong one and all that sort of thing. So it was very hard. I want to tell you, I don't minimize this, And like I say, even to that point, if I saw or heard anybody was disfellowshipped, I literally would go blind.
Yeah, so it was happening to her.
Absolutely blind and deaf for minutes,
Going into
because,
shock.
it was so horrible to me. And it wasn't because, in later years, I think I did get a bigger understanding of things, but really it took me back into a child's place, I guess you might say, and I was almost totally defenseless in my psyche from this threat, this horrible thing that was really, when people don't understand, well, why, give a flying fig or care about what this society, the fact is you have to look at the person that's been so indoctrinated. And when I say indoctrinated, we know they took all the scriptures in the Bible, everything, and applied them the way they wanted to create you as this.
Well, to show true repentance, some of the videos I watched of how they prove that you really are repentant, to prove to the elders. And if you don't say the right thing in the right order, then it doesn't matter. You're still going to get disfellowshipped and still get punished and humiliated before you have to grovel back and make sure that they are aware.
I was groveling.
Yeah, my mom was, any woman who was sobbing hysterically through 3 committee meetings, begging for forgiveness, brought her husband.
I wasn't begging enough because they said I wasn't.
Enough.
They said I wasn't sorry.
Yes.
Look at her; she's not sorry.
She's not sorry.
And then one of them said, "Like, look, what can you do with her?" I thought, are they hearing
No,
what
they
I'm saying?
weren't hearing.
And it's like it really was almost like some type of a demonic thing where they were hearing something else than what I was saying. It was it was very strange. Anyway, that's the way it ended up. And so then what was I to do? I had a call 3 days later from these 2 of the 3 original elders, and they said, we'd like to come over and talk to you about how you can get back in this organization or something like that.
And we're all like, why?
And I said, what? I said, how dare you? How dare you? I just did everything I could to stay. And now you think you're going to come over and tell me how to get
back.
I said, don't you ever call me again, ever.
Yeah.
Well, I never ever did darken their doors again, but I did start going for a few times to a neighboring. Well, I had my ex-husband. We went to a assembly over in Bakersfield, and I felt, I could not imagine life without the organization. I knew it was like the roadway to life. It was everything. And so I went over there, and they had an assembly. I forget everything, but they had the usual dumb little skits and things, and my husband, he was getting very uptight about everything. I saw what the prime elder where I was looked at me when I was there at the assembly, and he just like almost fall over backwards, like horrified that I was there. Like it
You're
was
in his
it was
space.
insane. It was insane. Like, oh yeah, you didn't think that this, that I wasn't a witness. And somebody called me on the phone. I don't know if any of these ex-witnesses had this, and they said, we want to know if you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I said, yes, I am. So I thought, how dare they take my name away from me? How dare they? After all I'd been through, knocking on doors for 42 years, and having 10,000 doors slammed in my face, and studying with, a dozen people at least, and all I've been through and what this meant to me, tell me that I wasn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses. How dare they, And so I went to a few meetings in another congregation, but all I could do when I was there was cry. And it was embarrassing, and I think they knew who I was, So literally I stopped going, and then sometimes I get these ideas. It's like I'm almost telling myself, like, oh, you're lying to yourself, you're not being true. And I thought, I'm going to just not read any literature or do any of this for a year and see if I've been brainwashed. And I thought, oh, ha, ha, Martha. It's like there are two people in here. Oh, ha, ha. Now it's like everything they said. You're lying to yourself. Blah, 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 back and forth, And I started when I started going through all this thing before the divorce and before this all happened, I had to move out on my own, and I couldn't sleep at night, which I have problems anyway. And I started listening to a nighttime talk show, and I heard first about Guy Finley, among other things. So I got some of his books, and I stopped reading the magazines. I had read every single article in every magazine and practically every book, cover to cover, since I was 10 years old. Okay? I am not kidding you. I really did.
Yes, very faithful.
Yeah. And I had really gone above and beyond. I looked into archaeology since I was 14. I had connected it all to the Bible. So, it was my world, but I don't want to get the impression I was like this petty dogmatism. This was really a universal picture for me. And I had a lot more compassion and so forth than other people did that were witnesses. And I thought, these people, they're pioneering the crazy. They're, going
they're driving
crazy.
themselves.
Yeah, they're going crazy. And this guy's friend that she had that I had studied with, she went that way. She went over the edge. I told her, don't listen to these people. They're not balanced. And she did crack up.
She did, and part of the reason she hosted me at her home, even though I paid a very small rent, was because she couldn't handle going out in service anymore. So she felt by hosting an auxiliary pioneer, it kind of alleviated her of that. And she was a hippie in the 60s, and it was really hard for her because her true nature is one of a free spirit, and to be so confined and constricted for so many years, it did make her crack, and she couldn't do that anymore.
Really, I have a great deal of compassion for her and a lot of other people, even people who are fanatical and everything else. But the thing was, after I went through all this, and I had to move again, and I was, really on my own. In fact, Sky was still going to the meetings, and I would go by her house, just needing a little comfort, and she said, "Mom, I can't come in. They're here," And she'd shoo me away, and it really hurt me, you know. But I knew that's what she had to do. And then my mother still.
But I would talk to you, but I just not when they were
Not
around.
when they were there.
I wasn't shunning her.
No, you didn't.
I never cut her off.
No, they didn't know she was talking to me. But if they were there, she had to tell me to go away.
Yeah.
You know, which is really weird. You know, for a lot of people that haven't been through this, they would think, you know, how horrible. And it was horrible for me because I was still I was very angry. I was extremely angry inside. I think now I know a lot more what to do. But at the same time, I thought, well, damn them, I'm not going to let them, you know, cause me to kill myself or drag myself into this pit. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of it, you know.
Right.
So anyway, sometimes the elders called on me, just a couple times actually, and it was so funny. They, you know, come in at least two because I was told that they were afraid. Somebody told me they're afraid, you know, they were going to get jumped by demons or something, talking to me or something. Yeah, this is really true. And I told them, I thought what I figured out was, I told them the scripture says when Solomon dedicated the temple that the heavens of the heavens cannot contain you, much less his house that I built. And I said, that is my opinion now. This organization is not God. Okay, it does not encompass God. And we see that in a worldwide picture of people. This is so much, there's wrong ideas. There's teachings of demons in these organizations. But there's also the terrible struggle and sincerity of all these people searching for God in their limited capacity, you know, and they are confused. They are confused, and they find out things that are really important and really true. And their stories are wanting and needing to be told. So it was hard to convey this to the witnesses because they are so limited, and the thing is they have protected themselves psychologically by doing, because they want it to be black and white. There was a brother I knew during that time period in that congregation who was very, you know, relatively new, and they made him an elder, and I don't think he was at all ready to be in that position. And he was very strict, was very restrictive to his kids, you know, and everything. And one time I saw him in the grocery store, and we just had a watchtower that, you know, was one of those ones that was a little bit more reasonable and trying to be compassionate, you know, which they did vary. They did fluctuate. You could see it's like...
Well, there were some that were nice, genuinely, and they wanted to be nice, and they probably... they struggled with their own conscience.
Well, it was written by different people, that's for sure. And he said, and we brought up the article somehow we were studying, and he said, well, I don't know if I like, he says things, you know, it's a little too wishy-washy for him, and it wasn't black and white enough for him. And I thought, that's exactly what he's like and where he's coming from. And he was very, very harsh on his kids. And I told him one time, I said, you know, I've been in an organization a long time, and I see this does not work. What you're doing does not work. And of course, he had horrible things to say to me. We lived right next door to him for 2.5 years. And I saw a lot, and he, of course, was very judgmental. They wouldn't let their kids play with our kids, and there we were, witnesses too. And the same with other people in that congregation. And I just, you know, like I said, I had never seen anything like it anywhere before, you know, in all the other congregations. So being there 22 years, I thought, I'm kind of trapped. This isn't the whole picture of what's going on in the organization. Lo and behold, years later, now I realize, yes, it was. You know, things really progressed in the organization all over to this point. So anyway, I read my books, I read books, like I read one on suicide, you know. I read one, the Four Agreements. I
Right.
talked to people, and you know where I got my kindness was from total strangers. I had a clientele of people I was working with and helping professionally, and I drew on them and their kindness. You say I got by on the kindness of strangers. Okay. And like I say, by God. And I tried to find another mate. I was looking very intensively. And eventually that did not work out either. So there I was, and have been, alone now for 20 years. And it's been a process. It's been a progressive process. And I've really, you know, at first for 6 years, I wouldn't even look at a site online. By that way, I also got into computers a little later than a lot of people. But when I did get into them and I started realizing that there were discussions in that, I really didn't like a lot of what people were saying. I felt that the society had been taken over by Annie the slave and was still really being used by God. And then about 6 years ago, I got more into the YouTubes and all the very good things that different ones brought out made me realize all the problems from the beginning. And I certainly know a lot about the beginning of the organization from what my mother told me and my grandmother. I didn't know my great-grandmother very well. She was, I was about five when she died. So I can tell you one thing, she never got out of her long black taffeta dresses. She died in 1953. So she kept that Victorian era with her all those years. But I think the fact is I did survive for one reason that's important is because I saw a bigger picture than the organization. And I had always educated myself, and I had experiences when I was younger to show me that people did know something. You know, they were, you know, the world is not full of dumb people. There is more to look at than what has been presented through the Watchtower Society. In fact, one of Guy Finley's illustrations was a person being at a movie theater and caught up in a horror movie, and you know, you just really are scared. And then you need to stand back and realize you're in a big room, and behind it there's a projector, and this movie's coming on the screen. You know, and when you realize that, you're not so afraid. So it's not been an easy thing, but I think I also have realized that this questioning and struggling we do should really be part of life. It is part of life. And like I said, what the society, what the Watchtower Society do, they are using you, they are a control group. They're not allowing you to think and progress. And that's the same with all cults, and it's for a reason, so they can use you. A lot of it is just to make money, or to make themselves a name, or whatever.
And that's another interesting thing, watching all these videos on the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of the earlier things, like the house that was owned by whoever was in charge in the 40s.
The Rutherford, the
house in San Diego here, and
yes, that's an amazing story right there.
I never once heard a single thing about that growing up, not once.
Well, I knew it was about it. It was in the books.
Well,
it was in some of the books,
the
but
books weren't. They weren't produced. after a certain point, and if you didn't have them, if you weren't in the Kingdom Hall, then you didn't have access. And honestly, as a kid, who's going to read through those books?
No, and the thing was, in my family, my mother's family, my great grandmother, we had every single scrap of paper, and I am not kidding you. I went through chests. There was stuff that Russell's wife had written that I looked at when I was 9 years old. Maybe God wanted me to see that, because why would I pick that out of a chest? You know, and the little cross and crown pin, I found one time in the chest. And they had every Watchtower and Wake volume. My mother gave them a lot of them to the Orange Kingdom Hall, because we were just carrying these tons and tons of books around for years. So finally, she gave a lot of it away. But I did look into a few things, but I really, like you say, you don't have time. And that's one thing they do. They keep you busy with busy work. It's just busy work.
Well,
it's not really progressive. I figured out after I left, I'd spent 16,000 hours at the Kingdom Hall. In which a lot of it was very trying for me. It's not progressive. And then they don't help the little children learn. What they needed was workbooks. I understand now that they do have something like that now. But all those years, they had just one size fits all. Little children sitting there with people who've been there for 40 years, being bored to tears, you know. I mean, I could have learned Hebrew, Greek, you know, I did take Latin in school, but it was not progressive. And I'll have to say to you, if there's one thing you can take away with this, when people say, why didn't you go back? You know, it's because this is not the love that saved a world. It is not. The society does not represent the God of love who saved the world. Okay? When they will disfellowship people and throw them away, and of course I could go into many stories about people who have mental issues, emotional problems, or in dire straits emotionally, and they throw you away. They throw you under the bus. They find you, they hit you on the road, throw you, and then run over you twice, you know, make sure you're really dead. Okay? They are not there, you know, it's not the love from God that we're seeing. They are like a business, and they've shown that to me many times, that they are running a business. So don't break your heart.
Yeah.
Don't break your heart,
You know,
over being out of this organization.
ultimately, my mom getting this fellowship was the best thing for her
Yes.
and us as a family,
Yes.
because it set us free. And although there was a great struggle and a lot of pain, growing pains, you know, I liken it to a butterfly when it is coming out of its little cocoon. If you help the butterfly out, it will die, because it gains its strength from escaping the cocoon.
Very good.
And
illustration.
it is just like that coming out of the organization. And you got your own pace. If you have to slowly back away like I did, and you know, you get to a certain point where you don't care what they think anymore. I could care less if this fellowship may make a public announcement. It's been so long, I doubt anybody remembers me, other than the friends that I had that never once came to say, "Hey, Sky, how's it going?" Not once.
Nope.
Not one. It's amazing. Or if you decide you're just going to write a letter and go in and have them meeting, you know, you do what you need to do, and in your time, and just get on with your life. Fill it with things that you love, with people that you love, and that love you back, and treat you with respect, and just don't waste any more time. That's it.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even want to get involved with all this thrashing things out in the discussion groups and everything years ago, because I figured they got 52 years of my life and they ain't getting any more.
Yeah.
Because I really had a lot of things I wanted to do with my life. And that is the tragedy, because I really did have the drive and the ability to do a lot of the things that I wanted to be a singer and a dancer and a lot of other things. And that was all deliberately roadblocked from me. And I never got to do those things. And so I'm doing this on a certain level. I really appreciate the long, hard hours that many have put into research and presenting things from the old literature, and that
Yeah.
it's really something.
I'm not doing that because I don't want to spend time
No,
doing
but
that.
I'm not.
This is more from just our personal experience, and
Yeah.
and also just to give support and lend more of a voice to a very large movement already of people
Yeah.
that are just from all over the world telling the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think what I'd like to do is the next conversation we'll have is talk about the kind of child abuse that we saw in our Kingdom Hall. And that is another thing that really bothered me growing up. So anyways, thank you for joining us, and
Yes.
we'll see you in the next